and welcome to another FrankieSense More. My name is Frankie Picasso, and I am your host today, and I'm very excited for you to meet my guest. Her name is Arlene Washburn, and she is an award-winning ethical matchmaking advocate, mentor, and science-based dating coach who has over 15 years of industry experience. Nice. As a founder of Love Pro Mastermind Academy, Arlene empowers matchmakers with advanced training, ethical guidance, and proven best practices to build sustainable, high integrity businesses. She's also a visionary behind the International Matchmaking Compliance Board, which elevates industry standards through the accreditation, mediation, and ethical oversight. And as a host of the Matchmaker Mentor podcast, Arlene shares insights and strategies to help other matchmakers succeed in a rapidly evolving market. Oh, and I should say, she's one of only 12 master executive certified matchmakers, the former CEO of the oldest state licensed school for matchmaking in America, and she is an award-winning expert voted the most innovative woman in relationship matchmaking in 2022. But sorry, folks, she's no longer a matchmaker herself. So welcome, Arlene.
I am so happy to be here and so grateful, Frankie. You have impacted my life in more ways than people can imagine.
Oh, that is so sweet of you to say. Thank you so much. You know, this is such an interesting, I don't know, you can't even call it a job, a profession, advocacy, whatever it is that you would call this. It's so interesting. And I know that you came out of the pharmaceutical industry many, many moons ago. So little girl, Arlene, I mean, nobody thinks about, oh, I'm going to grow up and match make people for a living. Did you match make Barbie and Ken? Like, how did all of this, where did it come from?
Yeah, it's such an interesting crossover. And because I teach matchmaking now, I'm always trying to figure out what is that one thing that unites us all, because I have students that are attorneys, that are social workers, that were guidance school counselors, you name it. And all I can say is that it's a calling. Something calls us into this profession, and it's needed now more than ever. And so after almost 20 years in the pharmaceutical industry in various roles, project management, sales, I left when I was a senior director, and they actually left me, and I was so grateful. But that transition into matchmaking, which is something I was always involved in, people's relationships. I could always tell who matched. I had matched people before, but I had no idea that this was a profession. And lo and behold, I saw this program on TV, and I was like, oh my gosh, I can so do this. And in the back of my head, it kind of sometimes takes me 5 years to actually pull the trigger on things. I don't know why that's the magic number. Just like with my podcast, I had 5 years thinking about doing a podcast. Anyway, I finally, when they left me, I took the plunge and I've never looked back. And I'm so grateful. I was very happy to be a matchmaker. And then I moved out to a remote area, and I had, joined an organization as their CEO and also trainer. And I fell in love with that aspect of it. And I feel like I can affect more hearts and couples by supporting other matchmakers. So that's what I do today. And I'm so happy to be a part of this. People keep saying, when are you going to retire? Do you think you're going to retire at 62? Because that's not too far away, folks.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Just
yeah.
4 years away. I'm like, hell no, I don't think I'll ever retire. I love what I do.
And that's the key to a successful long life is loving what you do. You got to love what you do. And I can understand that because as a coach, when I first became a coach and then I taught coaching, I would see people who came into coaching, they were, neurosurgeons. Like, why would you want to be a coach? You're a neurosurgeon. I mean, that's much more fascinating in my mind, right? But it's a calling, and it's something. It's not who you are. It's not what you do. It's who you are. It really is what inside this ability to coach others to do the best that they can do for themselves. So I'm wondering though, do people find it because they have either went to a matchmaker and found the love of their life, or they wanted to find the love of their life, and so they wanted these skills to do it for themselves?
Yes, I do believe, and I interview a lot of matchmakers. In fact, I have something coming up where I do a series of interviews leading up to National Matchmakers Day, which is October 31st. And I was the one who filed for that holiday, and it came through,
Oh,
and it was attributed to a jewelry store of all things. But when I was the CEO of that school, and what I find is that similar to how people go into psychology because they have their own issues they're trying to work through.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was the calling for me, and very much in common with so many of the matchmakers that I know, that maybe they were single when they started, or maybe they had had a series of relationships that didn't work out, and they want to understand what's behind all of this. And that was certainly the case for me. I had been married for almost 17 years and then divorced, and it kind of drew me into coaching. Actually, I was in coaching before matchmaking, which actually made me a much better matchmaker because having that skill set.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that's one common thread through all these matchmakers, that they're all seekers of how to keep, have how to maintain good relationships, how to combine people in the best possible ways. And it varies from person to person. Some people use astrology, some people use evolutionary psychology. I'm all about the science because I came from pharma, so I'm very science driven, but some people are using other things like intuition and all that,
So aside from pheromones, which I'm going to say are scientific, how does science match people?
So it's a number of things. I mean, we all pretty much have this in common. We're looking for people who have similar core values. They say opposites attract, and I think when people say that, they're really talking about, in my opinion, is more like their looks, perhaps. Like my husband and I are interracial, and he grew up in the country, I grew up in the city, and yet our core values are very much aligned. So I think that needs to be a common thread. Also, your lifestyle goals. If I wanted to live in the city and he wanted to live in the country,
That's
that
a
would not be
problem.
compatible. And so hence we live in the country, and I would never go back to a city if you
Yeah.
paid me a
Yeah. Yeah.
million
Same.
dollars.
Ditto here. Ditto here.
Oh,
Yeah.
I hate the city, even though I came from there. And so there's a number of things that you need to have in alignment, even if you think that you're opposites or maybe you complement. And I think maybe people confuse complementary
Hmm.
connections with opposites,
Yeah.
but birds of a feather
I
flock
think
together.
I think opposites attract initially because it's different from you, so it's interesting. You don't want to
Yeah.
be bored with somebody who's just like you. I mean, that might be what it is, but in the end, the alignment and having the similar core values, like you said, are the key. Because if and you have to really know what it is that you want from a relationship, and a lot of people don't know that, and they don't even know what they value. So that's probably
Yeah,
one of the first conversations you have, I bet.
absolutely. When I coached, particularly women, because I think women are more open to coaching and tend to want that more so. And I've coached people even into their 70s. I coached a 70-year-old woman, and she had no clue that she had very similar traits to her parents. And I think this is where the science comes
Mm,
in. A lot of what we do is derived from a belief system that starts between age 0 and 8, and
correct.
you form these beliefs that never get updated. That's why every year I write articles. I talk about spring clean your belief system every year,
Mm,
because
hmm.
your beliefs should be supporting your goals. If your beliefs don't support your goal, you're not going to get to where you want to get to. You want to achieve something and you don't believe you can do it, you're not going to do it, because your beliefs are going to take over. They want to be congruent with your
Exactly.
words, with your actions. So
If you talk,
that's where
we're talking
science
about law
comes
of
in.
attraction here a little bit, right? A little bit of the
Absolutely.
metaphysical, but it's true. If something's not showing up in your life, then you have a belief system that doesn't support that.
Yeah, and like I always quote my colleague, Dr. Aisha. She must be tired of hearing her name in any interview, because she used to say that a lot of the woo-woo is also true, because there is science behind that.
Yeah.
And a belief is an environment. Your
Hmm.
brain and your mind and your brain are two separate entities that people don't recognize. So
Yes.
here's where science comes in. And what you're thinking is that you're creating an environment for something. And so you always want to be congruent, like homeostasis, meaning like all working together. So if you're believing something, your words are going to say the same thing and your actions. So you're going to end up self-sabotaging and doing all the things versus changing the belief,
Right.
which is not easy. It's
No.
easy to know and hear. It's
Yeah.
not
I
easy
mean,
to do, but
I
it's
tell
doable.
people too, like, go in and check with are you afraid of spiders? Was your mom afraid of spiders? Are you really? Did you look at it? Did you hold it? You go, oh my God. Or can you look at it and go, you know what? I'm really not afraid of that. So that's a belief system I can let go of now. That
Yeah.
kind of thing. So I'm sure that there's, people. Let me ask you that. How superficial are people? Do they all come and want Miss Beautiful and Mr. Handsome, or are they willing to let go of some of that, the looks, to get the feeling that they want?
Absolutely. I think men and women will do that. Um, Most people come in with superficial criteria because they've been trained to think that that's the criteria that matters. When
Tall,
you
dark,
look
and
at all these
handsome.
apps,
Yeah.
yeah, you look at all the apps and what are the filters? Height, weight, ethnicity, religion, these things. I'm not saying that they don't matter. And absolutely, people need to be attracted. In fact, what the science shows is that people of a similar attraction, so to put it in layman's term, let's say if you're a 5 and you're with a 5, you're more likely to last than if you have a
Mm,
huge disparity. And if there's a big disparity, there's something offsetting it. And more often than not, it's money, right? So where a woman might be really beautiful with a man who's not as beautiful, but he's got a lot of money and a lot of
you
status.
see that a lot.
Sometimes that's legit, and sometimes it's just the money,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So yeah, so anyway, it's very complex, but yes, I think people start out with the superficiality, but if they go to a really good matchmaker, that matchmaker is going to hone in on what really matters, because they then have to go out and find that person, which is not easy for a matchmaker. It's just that they do it full time, right? And you have a database and you collaborate with colleagues, and you're talking to everyone wherever you go. If you're a matchmaker similar to a realtor, wherever you go, you're in the
Exactly.
human commodity, right? So you're talking to people, you're finding out their status, and you're always thinking, oh, would they be a match for my clients? So yeah, I think everyone starts with the superficiality, but I don't blame people for doing that. I just think that we've been trained to do that as
That's a good
opposed to
point.
knowing what really matters.
Yeah. And I know that you started a group for divorcees
Yeah.
after, I guess, after you got divorced. Yeah. And so how do they differ, let's say, coming into looking for number two or three even, as opposed to the first timer in their late 30s? I haven't found anybody yet.
Yeah.
Help
Well,
me.
a huge difference if someone has been divorced, or let's just say someone got married, the likelihood of getting divorced in America, and it's probably similar throughout, is about 50%, not even that high. Okay. If you are getting married for a second time, your divorce possibility goes up to 60 something percent.
Really?
And if
Wow.
it's third time, it goes up to 70 something percent. So
Wow.
I, knowing these statistics, felt I should be talking to people coming out of divorce, because more often than not, the likelihood of that happening is higher. And also because instead of figuring out what what worked, what didn't work, how do I want to proceed, who makes a good match for me, etc. People don't spend the time doing that. They're just, okay, I got a divorce and now I'm
And they don't
in my
heal.
life. And and also they don't regain their sense of self, because
Yeah.
when you're in a relationship, there's a lot of merging that happens by design, by you wanted whatever, but you're merging with this individual, and then now you're back to being on your own. You have to refine yourself. In fact, a lot of women start businesses because they all of a sudden remember, when I was a kid I wanted to do this and I never did it, now I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
So
And so
you need
freedom.
to.
Now I got freedom. Woo. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a huge difference from someone who has a biological clock ticking.
Yeah.
And it's a difference
My friends are, different age, well, close age group to yours, a little bit older probably, who got divorced. But I know that some of them didn't even know how to write a check. Their husbands had looked after all financial, you know, do, doings and in the banking and all of that. They didn't know how to do anything. Some didn't drive, some didn't. So here they find themselves really like, if I don't find somebody else, I'm like, well, you could learn how to do those things. It's not that difficult.
Yeah.
And so that's a problem. And also because men paid for a lot of the household things, or it was in their name, when I got divorced and I had to put, let's say, the gas bill in my name, they go, well, you have to put up like a couple $100 because we don't know who you are. And yet I had been the person who'd been paying it the whole time,
Mhm.
or the car or these things. So women never back then really had an opportunity to get things in their name, so to establish credit, so that when that came along they had some autonomy.
Yeah. And that's a huge thing that has impacted our society in a positive and a negative way. So back then there was a social construct. It wasn't ideal. It wasn't fair for women,
Yeah.
etc. But there was a construct. Now it has there are no constructs. So when there's complete, like nobody knows what they're doing or how to do it, they don't know, like men don't know how to approach women, women don't know how to respond to
I
men.
think men are terrified of women now.
Well, and and I don't blame them to some
I don't
degree.
either.
Yeah, so these things that women say, I don't need a man. Well, if you want to walk, if you want to get married and you're a heterosexual woman, you need a man. You want to go to the beach and hold hands and have a romantic time with a man, you need a
You need a
man.
man. Yeah.
Like, so this phrase, I don't need a man, which our brain listens to that, our mind listens to
Yes.
that,
And so you're not going
and
to get one.
responds and has you act a certain way because now you're going to repel the men. And so I'm like, just remove that kind of nonsense out of your head and acknowledge that, yes, I would like to have a partner in my life.
Right.
And I happen to be a
Reframe it
heterosexual
to a
woman.
positive.
Exactly. And that
Yeah.
means I need a man. You want to bake a cake? You need
Maybe you don't
flour.
need them, but you want one. And that's the
Exactly.
difference. Yeah.
Well, no, I think the difference is that need is not the same as needy. And I
Yes.
think that's where people conflate the two. And so there's a lot of messaging out there that's not ideal. So now you have these young generation who, they're looking for love, particularly women, because they want a partner who's going to be a partner, who's going to be their emotional,
Equitable.
all this stuff. But now they're putting too much on
Yeah.
this individual.
Yeah.
And that's not realistic either because you can have friends, you can have other people in your life that fulfill certain aspects that you want out of a relationship. And you can have this lover, your financial partner, your romantic partner, and limit it to something, or maybe the parent of your children. You can parent together, but
Yeah.
how much can one person do? And the same goes for men. Don't get me wrong, it's not just a one-sided
Yeah.
book. You were mostly always talking to women, gee, women that we are.
Yeah.
And I just want women to understand this, that you can have other people
Yeah.
and you should have your own life and be fulfilled by yourself and not
Yes.
be in, looking for a partner to get, because there's a lot of giving.
You
Partnership is
have to
about
be
giving.
happy with yourself first, and then you invite someone into your life.
Absolutely. To
That's the
complement.
only way it's going to, I think it's the only way it's going to be successful, really.
Absolutely.
If you both have things, and nobody can be 100% to somebody else. And I don't want to be that. I don't want to be the only friend my partner has, or the only, you know, then
It's
they rely on me
exhausting.
for everything. Yeah, it is exhausting. I have my own stuff that I want to do, like do my show or
And
whatever it is. Right.
one of my biggest pet peeves of late that I think about all the time, I'm like, oh gosh, because I've had a couple of conversations with women who have had a relationship, it didn't work out, and then now they take all this time off knowing that they actually want to have a relationship, but they're fixing themselves, finding themselves, doing the work and all this. I'm like, you can still prioritize having a relationship, because unfortunately the asymmetry, which I've been talking a lot about because I interviewed Tim Ash, who's an expert in evolutionary psychology, and he wrote a book with Dr. Gottlieb, and they talk about the asymmetry between men and women and how women peak at a very young age
Mm-hmm.
and men don't. They peak at a much later age. And
Yes.
what does that create? Now you have the man who has more success, more money, has taken care of himself and is doing great. And now he has the option to date much younger, because the woman that was in a relationship, it didn't work out and wants to have a relationship, decides, I'm just going to take some time off, even though this is a priority for me. Now, I'm okay if you want to be single. If you're happily single, God bless. I went through a phase in my life where I was very happily single.
Yeah.
However, if you feel that having a relationship is a priority, it is not mutually exclusive to starting a business, to raising kids,
Right.
to finding yourself, to going for therapy. In fact, you learn more about relationships while you're in a relationship and going through therapy
Nothing
than
wrong with
on your
Mr. Right
own.
now.
Exactly. Well, so
You practice.
yeah.
Practice makes perfect. Yeah, I hear what you're saying, and I think you're absolutely right. And I think that especially with men who who've gone through their midlife and they've been divorced and they're looking for somebody, they do tend to go younger. But I have found that after they've gone younger, then they come back to their age group because they a lot of times they realize that the reference points that they've had in their life, these younger people, they don't know about those things. They go, what's that? The Flintstones? Who are they? Like they just don't know. some of the humor and some of, those important moments in their life that make you more comfortable with somebody.
Yeah, and I think that this is where the science comes in again and research. The couples that are that last over time and have longevity tend to be within a 3-year age difference.
Yeah, I would think so.
So that gap is pretty significant. And
Hmm.
there are unicorns and
Yeah.
snowflakes out there that might, a younger woman perhaps who's very mature, but more often than not, to your point, the ideal scenario is to have that 3-year age gap because there's a lot in common there.
So I'm single. I'm not single, but I'm single. I'm 40. I never married. Am I a loser to come to a matchmaker? Is there a reason that that I need this person, or is that okay? Like, I mean, I'm sure there's some people out there thinking, God, you need to have somebody matchmake you, or the opposite. I, I just can't find anybody. I'm too busy. I'm working. I'm
That's
no
exactly
time, no
right.
time, no time. Do I have time for a relationship then? If I don't have time to find somebody?
Well, okay, so this is such a great question, and it's one that used to come up with me, especially working with men, who were attractive, tall, good, successful, and they would all say, "Well, I don't need a matchmaker." And I'm like, "Everybody needs a matchmaker, and you particularly need a matchmaker. You want to weed out the crazies, the gold diggers, the non-compatible,
How
all
many
the
coffee
list of
dates do
not."
you want to have?
Exactly, because there's a huge investment of time and money and energy in just even figuring out anything about a person. The difference is, so just to answer your question, um, losers don't go to matchmakers. Very affluent people who are busy running businesses, who sometimes certain people are not, especially men, are not comfortable approaching women. Perhaps there's been a lot of stuff where, at work it's not allowed. They work long hours, they travel. They tend to be affluent because matchmaking is an investment. So it's far from being losers, the people who are hiring matchmakers. These are people who are seeking a way to outsource something that's super important in their life, and they want an expert to help them achieve that. And the matchmakers do all the interviews and they will grill the person in a way that you shouldn't when you're on a date, right? And it's going to take you 2 or 3 dates, if not more, to figure out someone where a matchmaker can figure it out sooner. They will make sure the person looks the way that, it would be appealing to you. They vet them, they run background checks to make sure, especially for women, because more women
I
are
want to be
hiring
safe.
matchmakers than ever before, that they're not criminals, they're not on a sex offender list, especially if you have children. They're verifying their identification to know where they live. This is a lot of work, and this is what
Wow.
you're
Yeah.
paying for. And then all you have to do is show up, because matchmakers, actually most of them have a concierge service where they find out your availability, their availability, and they schedule the uh, introduction. They'll even make a reservation. Some matchmakers will send flowers. I mean, they have a full-on concierge service. So this is a very high-end service. Now, yes, they're always going to be Target and Tiffany's, right? So the pricing on this, and I mean Target, where you get value, you get good service at a reasonable price. Yes, those matchmakers exist. And then there's the Tiffany's, where you're paying 150,000 or more to work with a matchmaker for 6 months, but they're handling everything for you. And they also have access to the kind of people that are at your caliber, and it costs money to have that kind of access. So it's a very interesting industry, and it's very,
How
very
many dates?
prolific.
Sorry, how many dates or how many prospects generally does it take to make a match on like a typical match
Yeah.
of a high end, you know?
So it's so funny because I think what people don't realize is that you're paying the matchmaker to go on the dates for you, so that you're only meeting people who are qualified to meet you. Therefore, you're going to meet less people. So
Right.
it's not quantity, it's quality. Now, in terms of how many dates it takes, it depends. I mean, I had a client, she actually was a coaching client, and I had the gentleman who came in, and the minute he walked into my office, I said, I'm going to introduce him to this woman, and my team, I had people working with me. They're like, no way, she's a couple of years older. I'm like, trust me, there's this gut feeling and all the other things from the interviews. And sure enough, we set them up on a date. We got them, we made the arrangements, all that good stuff. Now, I was her coach because I used to coach women and work with men as my clients. She didn't want to go on a second date because there were some, I don't want to say stupid reasons, but there were reasons that weren't
Superficial.
going to impact a longevity in a long-term relationship. So we had some conversations and I helped her to get out of her own way. And she said, okay, I'll go on a second date. And they continued. And in nine months into this, I get a phone call and she says, we're getting married.
That's
And
awesome.
I was like, amazing. And they wanted me to go to the wedding. And she got married for the first time at the age of 60. She
Wow.
only met him, he only met her. So that was a
Yeah.
one and done. And that happens more often than you would
So you
think.
wouldn't have to send them two, three, five people before they
No,
pick
because
one.
people are looking for the one, they're not looking for a bunch of people. Now, are there people who go through a whole matchmaking process and not end up in a long-term relationship? Absolutely, because it's not just the matchmaker who's responsible, you're responsible as well.
Right.
So you can't guarantee an outcome that requires both parties to cooperate. In other words, like I can give you fish all day long, but if you're letting it go, if you're dropping things, if you're self-sabotaging, doing whatever, there's
Right.
nothing I can do about it. So when
Yeah.
people go to a matchmaker and they ask about success rates, I'm like, that's the worst question you can ask because it means absolutely nothing.
Yeah. I wasn't talking about success as much as how many, I guess I was in a way, but just, you're going to set me up with a date and like, would it be 3 dates this week? Or would you just say, I'm just sending you one person, you make it work kind of thing?
Yeah,
I just wondered
it
too
depends.
about who would make a good matchmaker.
That's such a hard question because as I said, I mean, I'm interviewing a bunch of people who were former students and so forth, and every single one of them has a different background. I mean, I had two lawyers that I interviewed. I had an accountant that I just interviewed, another colleague has a degree in what is it? I'm drawing a blank all of a
That's
sudden.
okay.
It's some high degree. What I say though, a good matchmaker is someone who listens, who is not judgmental, because you do need to take yourself out of the equation. If I'm working, I used to have a lot of my clients were Caucasian, affluent, and not interested in dating someone of color. If I'm going to be offended by that, I'm not going to be able to
Mm-hmm.
support that because it's a matter of what they want. It has nothing to do. Also, if they have a certain political leaning, whether or not I agree with them, I need to take myself out of the equation. So those are the key things. Also, a matchmaker needs to be a good communicator. They need to present themselves professionally and appropriately. More recently, I've been seeing a matchmaker on LinkedIn who looks like she's a porn star. And I'm like, why are you representing our industry that
Mm-hmm.
way? It just
Yeah.
already people have this thing that they think matchmakers are setting up people for sex, and it's not the case. And now you have someone acting like that, which is very disappointing. And again, I'm not judging. I just feel like
No,
how
I
you
hear you on that
present, if
though.
you want to bring professionalism to an industry that's already been people
Any
ask,
industry, really. Come
yeah,
on. If you're in business and you're professional, you don't dress like a porn star. Like that's just how it
exactly.
is. Yeah.
So those are some of the qualities, not, being inclusive, being supportive, really genuinely wanting to help. That is my number one motivation in life, is to help end this loneliness epidemic. And I do it through supporting other practitioners. But if you're going into it for the money and ripping people off, you're just, it'll come around to you and you'll get caught doing that. But also, that's really you have to be kind of like a healer. And so that's why we get so many people who are in an industry that supports other people.
Well, that's an
You know,
interesting thing that you just brought up because I know that it's very important to you to have, ethical advocacy in this profession. You've actually set up a board for that. What would make somebody unethical? I mean, you just brought one point that you're doing it for money, or maybe you take money and you don't match make them sincerely. That could be one, I guess. What
yeah.
else? would
I
people
mean,
do?
I have a very distinct code of conduct that is available for anyone and everyone who goes to the imcboard.org. And essentially, it's a code of conduct that also aligns with the laws of the land. And I don't mean US, I mean Canada, I mean UK, all the laws, because they're all very similar. And unfortunately, the kind of training that's out there and available for professional matchmakers does not really talk about ethics and compliance. And so often, if a matchmaker is violating something, it's unbeknownst to them. They don't even know because they don't
Mm,
know what they don't know. There are some people who are just egregious and like, are just out for the money and are doing unethical things, intentionally. The
sure.
good majority, especially the matchmakers that I surround myself with, and I've been around thousands of matchmakers all over the world because this is a worldwide profession. They want to do the right thing. And so the reason I created that board was to help bring awareness of this is something that you're doing, you may not realize, but you're violating this. And so it's become very popular. I started a newsletter and I just sent it out. It's a monthly newsletter. I sent it out yesterday, and I have a 70% open rate. That's unheard of for
That's
for
amazing.
emails
Yeah.
because it's nothing but information. I'm not trying to sell you anything. I'm not. Occasionally, I'll offer my courses and let people make people aware, but it's not like a hard sell. It's really like be aware of this, so you're not violating this.
Yeah. Wow. How many schools would there be around the world, matchmaking schools?
That I know of. There's maybe like five that I know of.
Wow.
This is insane. So there's one school that has an online program that offers a bunch of different types of professions, quote unquote
Mm,
professions, and it's like a couple $100 and you pay for that, and then you think you're you know what you're doing, and what you're doing is really creating a lot of risk for yourself. Then there's other schools where they offer you these modules that you go self-paced, you do it on your own, and then you're sitting home saying, "Oh my gosh, what do I do next? When should I do this? How do I do?" It's insane. And so part of the reason why I started the school is because I know that a lot of the didactic, how you sit there and you take notes, then you
yeah.
go home and do nothing, or you go to a conference, you get all excited. I'm like, no, 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 we're not playing that game. If you come to my school, it's a done with you program where you get the information, you get the homework to do it for yourself and your business, and then you show me what you did, and then we move on to the next thing. And it's a very different approach because people actually accomplish what they need to accomplish within the training.
Right.
And so that was part of it. But I know of maybe a little bit more than a handful of schools for matchmaking, which is insane.
Yeah.
This is such a
That is
growing
insane.
profession.
Especially at it's expensive to get a matchmaker, and you certainly want to have somebody who's professional and knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
I'm not going to wake up tomorrow and go, oh, you know what? Yes, I might match make a friend or something, but it's not for money. There's a difference there. I think coaching used to be a
Unfortunately,
lot like that. People think coaching and consulting are the same, and they're not.
yeah.
People, you see it everywhere. Oh, I'm a coach. Are you? Where'd you go to school? Oh, I didn't go to school. Yeah, it's
Yeah. No,
different.
that's definitely the case with matchmaking is
Yeah,
it's the area that I want to change. And that's why the IMCB, because I really want people to have a basic knowledge of how to run a matchmaking business without violating laws and providing customers the proper care of their data, of how you treat them, of what your contracts say so that they're not vague, which, by the way,
that's
is
very
essential.
interesting that you bring that up. What would be in a contract?
What's really important in contracts is to really define the scope of work, that if you have laws in your territory and in the territory where your client is, because often matchmakers, I could be in New Jersey and have a client somewhere else. The laws vary in the US from state to state,
Hmm.
from country to country. So if your area requires a 3 business day rescission period, you have to have that in the contract. And it's not just where you are, but where your client is.
Right.
um, you have to identify your refund policy. If you are going to allow a hold time for people to explore relationships, how long is that period? So there's a lot of things that go into the contract, and there's also operational things that should be identified in your contract that most matchmakers may not know. And the sad reality is lawyers don't know. Why? Because they don't understand this industry. You go to an attorney and you need a contract, they need to know what you're trying to accomplish. And how do you give them that information, really?
Yeah.
So, and to your point earlier, there is no barrier to entry. Anyone can put up a website and start saying they're matchmakers and become matchmakers, because I did it. I later went on to a school, and then I realized, okay, well, that training was a good, very, very low foundation of things that I already knew, because I came with a lot of business acumen into this. But what I've learned now, I'm teaching to people who have been in the industry 25, 30 years, because no
There's
one else.
a lot of, I'm not gonna say a lot, but I have seen quite a few men want women from countries like Russia or Ukraine or different countries where I think, or Philippines, where they think women are a little more subservient, or they think that they can get, who are, they're desperate, so they'll get these women. How far out do you reach? Like, what is your reach for
So,
matchmaking?
yeah, so I work with matchmakers worldwide, and I think that there's a misconception about women in these other countries because they're educated, they're knowledgeable. They are in different, financial situations in some cases where it's a little bit more of how kind of it used to be in the US. I mean, I was recently interviewed for a documentary about the Passport Bros. And it's a really great documentary, and it talks exactly about that. But the sad part is that the men in America have decided to divest and go to other countries, not even, like Cambodia, the
Hmm.
Philippines, to
Thailand.
find wives because they want wives that are more, what they consider more submissive, more feminine, more this, more that. But those women over there, they're smart women, they're business women. I think that when people don't travel, and I'm a world
Hmm.
traveler, I've been to China, Japan, Europe, throughout the US, the Caribbean. I'm always traveling and I'm always looking for a new place to go to. And so when you've traveled, you realize that these are all countries with normal people who read, who watch TV, who are educated. Just because you're in America or
Yeah.
Canada or the UK or whatever, there's a misconception. But
They think
yes,
if
there
English is your
are.
first language, then you're smarter for some reason.
Meanwhile, you go there and they speak 5 or 6 languages. But the thing
Exactly.
is, the key is though, yes, if someone is in a financial situation where it would benefit them, but they also want to be attracted, they also want a number of things to be able to decide if they want to explore that relationship. If you go by 90 Day Fiance, those are shows that's for ratings. That's not what's happening in reality.
Hmm. Would you turn somebody down that just wants somebody for money?
No, because so this is where the non-judgment comes in, right? There are matchmakers in New York, in Beverly Hills, who work with a certain clientele where the men, in this particular case, I'm going to say men who are very affluent and want to date women and marry them, even who are younger, who are beautiful, all the things. They understand that there's a contractual thing, right? Now, the people with money know how to protect their money, but you can go into a lifestyle, and it's not like these people don't genuinely fall in love or whatever. Now, in the kind of matchmaking I did, I never had that kind of clientele, and I worked with very affluent people. They were all dating people of a similar age. It was a different type of thing, but that's the market there. And so I don't judge. So if somebody would come to me and say, "Look, I'm wealthy. I want someone younger and beautiful," I'd be like, "Go over here. Let me refer you to my colleague over here, and you talk to her, because that's not the kind of work that I do. I don't have the database to support it, and I don't even have access to those type of women." And so that's pretty much how it rolls in the industry. There's something for everyone. There's a lid to every
Mm.
pot, and between consenting adults, it's all good. I mean, I have a matchmaker taking my course right now who focuses on ethical non-monogamy. So
Ethical
cheating,
non-monogamy.
correct.
How
These
does
are
that? So
people.
that just says that the both agree to the that would be the ethical part.
Correct. This is a
Okay.
really smart woman. She's former military. Her husband's former military. She has an MBA. She's very professional. And this is the business that she runs because she is in that lifestyle. And she and her husband decided, we're going to ethically be non monogamous. Whereas so many marriages of people who are so proper and both parties are cheating or one person's
Yeah.
cheating, And in this case, they're just being upfront about it. So this is where the non-judgment comes in, because there's a matchmaker for everyone. You know, if you have a certain ethnicity that you want to date, if it's a religion or a location, there's all kinds of niches within the matchmaking world. LGBTQIA, all that
Sure, sure.
stuff.
Yeah. It's fascinating. Everybody wants somebody unless they don't.
Yeah, and there's plenty of those people who are happily single, and I respect that.
Yeah.
And I know what that feels like because I've been there before, and then I came out of it, you know.
Yeah.
But it's a
Yeah.
personal choice, and you always have agency. So it's not everybody has to have kids, not everybody has to have a partner. But if you don't have a partner, what you do need to have is a lot of friends, because there's a study going on for over 80 years at Harvard. One of our presidents was part of that study. It's still ongoing, trying to figure out what constitutes for a happy life.
Yes.
And what has been determined that it's not the money, it's not the things, it's the relationships that you make. So it's super important to consistently be making new relationships. And as you get older, you report less pain, you live longer, and so many other benefits. And that those relationships doesn't have to be a significant
Yeah.
other.
They show that in the Blue Zone. They showed that,
Absolutely.
communities come together, they eat together, they get together. Like we used to have a
That's
street
community.
party in where I lived all the time. It was so much fun. We had just the best times of, neighborhoods kind of don't do that anymore, but we did. We ensured it. And yeah, we were
I think
happier.
that's what's
Yeah.
coming. I think that's what's coming because governments are getting involved because there's less marriages, less births. We're not replacing ourselves. And so it's having an impact on financially. So, in Japan, the government got involved and they started an app. And I'm like, why are you putting an app out there? Apps are not the answer. I met my husband through Match.com 15 years ago. Now,
Me too. I think I was on Plenty of Fish, actually. I think we met up.
yeah,
I didn't even
that's
want
not
that
working.
though. Yeah.
And kids are moving away from it because we've lost that personal touch, especially on the heels of COVID. So, where I think governments need to jump in is create community, create locations where people can congregate and meet one another. And then you get over all your biases about, height, this, that, and the other, because now you meet a human and you're like, wow, there's a connection here. We have so much in common. And
There
he
is a je
smells
ne sais
good.
quoi thing that happens, like you think it's looks, but it's not necessarily. There's a smell, there's something.
All your senses have to be in the room. Yeah. And you have
I,
to
I
really
mean, there's this
get
guy who used
them.
to ask me out all the time. I'm, no, you're not my type. It wasn't my type. You're a nice guy. Wasn't my type. But then he kissed me one day and I went, whoa.
Oh,
Like there was just something happened. And it was like, whoa, you know? And I can't explain it. But all of a sudden I was attracted to this guy, like crazy
yeah.
attracted. Yeah, it was weird. So yeah, I don't know. You don't know just by looking at somebody. You just cannot tell.
No,
You,
scent is huge, and
scent
most
is
people are
huge.
not
Yeah.
aware because we're animals, and so we have these senses that are operating whether you recognize it or not. I
Yeah.
happen to be very aware of my sense of smell, so I can one whiff I can tell this person's not for me because
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I know I'm very conscious of it, but a lot of people are not. But even mannerisms, how they laugh, how they speak, all of
Yes.
that matters.
I used to write dating profiles for men on Match. And it was really funny as you go through the differences between, men and women. But the men would have a truck and they would have a fish.
Oh,
So it was kind of like, you're telling me you're a hunter gatherer? Is that
yeah.
what you're trying to tell me? And the women would be there with their cleavage and their boobs hanging out. And I'm like, that's what you think men need in order to get you. And
Yeah.
and that kind of bothered me because man, you don't have to do that. Like you don't have to do that. Like there's other like laying on your bed, right, kind of thing. But men would never tell their story. I found they would copy other men and go long walks. I want a woman to go from jeans to an evening gown and long walks on a beach. That was their criteria. So I would say, when was the last time you went to a black tie event? Oh, I've never been to one. Well, why would you want a woman to go from jeans to an evening gown? I don't know. You know, when did you go to the beach last? Oh, 5 years ago on my vacation. So why is that important? It's like they're not thinking, like they're just not
No.
even thinking of their criteria in the right way. It's like you're not going to get anybody. No wonder nobody's responding to you.
Yeah.
Like it's crazy.
it's so funny how people just have these knee-jerk reactions to, copy one another. I had a woman, she was a college professor, attractive, very put together in that she, was knowledgeable and all this stuff, great personality. And she's like, Arlene, I don't know why I keep attracting these men that are just all they want is sex, and they're not educated, blah blah blah. And I'm like, let me take a look at your profile. And when I looked at her profile, I'm like, oh my God, you look like a prostitute in this. I didn't say that to her, but I'm
No,
like, what are you portraying here? Like, an image is speaks more than 1,000 words, as they
it
say,
sure
right?
does.
And
Yeah.
and that's the first impression. And men are so visual, and so people
And
form an
literal.
opinion and literal. They form an opinion instantly. So be aware and mindful of that. You can still look sexy. I mean, you can look sexy with glasses on and like a librarian and still look sexy. Like, it
Yeah.
sexy is not in your face sexy. In the
Yeah.
same way that, the way men send women dick pics. And I was like, why are men doing this? So I had to find out the research and the science behind it. And I realized is that because men are not hairy women, so they think very differently. So imagine if women were sending pictures of their genital to men, they would be thrilled. They would be so happy. Oh my gosh, this is great. And so they think because they would be thrilled that sending that to a woman. And it's like, guys, women are not turned on by this. Get it together.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's just, there's such a disconnect with not understanding each other, which if we had more of that, if they taught that in high school and
Yeah.
college, throughout your education, constantly teaching the differences and the similarities as well, because there's a lot in common, people would be so much more functional in relationships as they grow into having
100%.
one.
Yeah. I
That's
like
just
to read. I like to read. And I would always meet a date at Chapters. I think you have Chapter. You have, I
we
can't
have
remember.
Barnes and Nobles.
Barnes and Noble.
Yeah.
So I'd walk through the aisles. Oh, did you read this? Do you know this author? Like, I just want to know, like, what their, perception of this store is, and what have you read and what haven't you read? Because I like to read, and I wanted somebody who, if you didn't read, at least be knowledgeable about different things. It was important to me. So,
You
I
sound
would,
like a sapiosexual, which I am as well. Like, you could be the most beautiful person, you smell delicious. If you're dumb,
oh, I
and
can't do
I
dumb.
don't say that in a mean way, but if you're not intellectually curious and you don't have conversations about new things and ideas, I can't deal with it. You're great for somebody else. I cannot deal with a person who doesn't. I'm always learning. That's my only addiction.
Yeah, me
So I
too.
need to
Forever
have
a
that in
student.
common.
Forever
Yeah.
a student. It was so funny you say that, because when I first dated my husband, the first time I went out with him, I didn't think I was going to go out with him again. And it was my daughter who said, no, go out with him again. And I only wanted to go out as a friend. I didn't want anything really. I was just looking for someone to go to a movie with or whatever. And then he wrote me, I didn't think he was that smart, but then he wrote me something in an email, and I went, wow, that's different. Okay, he is smart. He just doesn't show it
Mhm.
all the time, I guess. I don't know. And then it was like, oh, okay, now I'm turned on. Because it is, I have to be turned on intellectually more than
That's what
anything else.
sapiosexual is.
Yeah,
And we have
really
that
is
in
it.
common, by the way. So when I met my husband, it was, my daughter was maybe 20, 21, I don't remember. And she's the one who kept convincing me to go out with him. And he's very similar. This man is so low key about how smart he is.
Yeah.
And he went to this amazing high school that's like an Ivy League high school. And he studied Latin. I mean, and he just knows the names of all these things and how things work. He and I have a different type of intelligence, but I'm just in awe with the amount of stuff that he knows. He's so low key about it. And he's kind of goofy, like making jokes all the time, that people don't realize how smart he is.
Yeah.
And so that's why, you have all these people who go on first dates and don't go on second dates. You're not
Mhm.
going to find this out on the first date. You need
No.
to give people a chance and peel back the layers, because, I mean, we were together for maybe 8 years, and one of his friends from high school came to talk about, he was talking about athletes in his school, which is a very, Blair Academy is like a very prestigious school. So many great, amazing people have gone there. And athleticism is huge. To be like the top athlete in that school is a big deal. So his friends talking about this, that, and then, and so, and then he gets the part about who they voted for the top athlete, and then he stopped talking. I'm like, wait, who was the top athlete? And he turns around, he says, who do you think? And I was like, Warren? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, my husband never told me this.
That's
It's
funny.
crazy.
Yeah.
You go to this high school now, and there's a huge mural of
Oh,
him.
wow. Dedicated to him. Yeah. That's
And so
awesome.
I say all that to say that there are so many men who have been raised to be low key, not be braggadocious, and they don't lead with that kind of, some
Yeah.
guys are like they lead with their money, they lead with their accomplishment. My husband's not that kind of guy.
Yeah.
And so if you don't give a guy a shot, you're not going to find out what they
That's
can,
right.
what they have to offer.
That's right. 100%. Yeah. So, Arlene, why don't you tell people like where they can find you and if there's anything that you really want them to know before we leave here today?
Well, I'll tell you, I have the Matchmaker Mentor podcast, which I'm so enjoying. It took me 5 years to launch that
I
thing, and
love
I
it. It's fun.
love
Oh,
it.
yeah. You're the 555 queen.
So please, follow me there. And if you are even thinking like a smidge that you think you might be a matchmaker, I don't care how accomplished, educated you are. There are Harvard graduate matchmakers that are in this industry because they love love. They want to help people find love. Just go to the lovepromastermind.com and join us there. And for those of you who are single, I do have a referral network because I know matchmakers all over the world. I help daters find the right matchmaker for them. Or
That's
if
good.
they go into the database, they can fill out a profile and it's more passive, but we share those profiles only with matchmakers so that you can meet the clients of the matchmakers. And that's through the Worldwide Referral Network, which is www.network.com. Thank you so much
Well,
for
I am
having
so glad that it didn't take you more than 5 minutes to say you're going to be a G woman. Could be 5 years
me.
from now. We're going to, that's awesome. Thank
I,
you
I have
so much.
instincts about these things, and it's the
Yeah.
best decision I've made. And I am so
Yay.
grateful that you supported me into that opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you. We are so thrilled to have you as well. Facebook, I'm going to say goodbye to you. We'll wave goodbye to you folks.